Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.
Hello fly tires, this is Lance from Fly Fish Food. I want to show you one of my favorite dry flies. This is called the Bionic ant, which is basically a large sailor ant style fly. So sailor ants have been around for a while. Well, I tried to get Umpqua to accept this fly for several years, and they kept turning me down, saying they already had something similar in the catalog, which they were right. They did have something similar in the catalog, but they were tying them all with a red top instead of a white top, and they were tying them all in 16, 18, and 20 sizes, which I use mostly 14, 12s, and sometimes even 10s in this one. So it's just kind of a big sailor ant pattern. We do a couple tweaks to it to make it a little bit more effective, in my opinion, but without further ado, let's get started here. So I've got a TMC 100 hook in the vise. This is a size 14. Okay, I'm going to start the thread with UTC 70 denier in black, and we'll start the thread just behind the eye of the hook, wrap down to about the point. And what we're going to do here is use these Wapsi ant bodies. So they're a cool little foam body that comes already made with a white cap on them, so they're a little easier to see. Any black cylinder would work, but these are definitely the easiest style to see. Next, I'm just going to measure this up so that I make sure I have a little bit of the black and the white showing up front. I can always trim the back end of this if I need to a little bit. I probably won't use all of the shank. I could wrap the thread back a couple more, but I think we're at a pretty good tying point right about there. So I've got it measured. I'm just going to wrap around loosely once, twice, then I'm going to start tightening down with the thread to hold it in place. Then I'm going to pull the foam up and hold it in place and wrap a couple more times with tension to really hold it. Now it won't wiggle and rotate and roll on the shank of the hook. Okay. Next, we're going to just cover over the top of some of this foam. You can even move the thread forward and do it in bunches if you'd like. I want to leave some of the black showing and definitely the white kind of sticking up, so that if you're a fish looking from underneath, when I get this packed down here in the middle, I'm going to cover over all these segments here. When we get that done, we've got two very distinct segments on the fly, and when the fish is looking at it from, let's see, so you can see it slightly that angle, the white almost disappears in the silhouette of the sky, and you get more of just the two black bumps showing, if that makes sense. So the white's for us to see, not for the fish to see. All right, so I'm going to cover that foam with the black thread, like so. Doesn't have to be perfect, but something to that effect. Okay. Next, I'm going to add a wing. Now, the wing that Umpqua uses is this parapost wing in brown caddis. It's kind of a cinnamon brown type color. That's what we're going to tie it with also. But just as a side note, the glory of tying your own flies is that you get to vary these to your heart's delight, right? So one of the things I do when I'm fishing low light conditions, I have a few of these in my box that have either polar bear, EP fibers, or white parapost wing, or something that's a little bit easier to see than the brown caddis. The brown caddis, however, looks a lot like the wings on those larger flying ants that you'll see around. They're kind of a brown dun color. So I'm going to use a bit of this polypost wing, and I'm just going to get one strand of it, and what we're going to do is just tie it in about mid-shank, latch over the top of it. I'm going to go over it a couple of 3 times, kind of moving forward. Then I'm going to fold it back and wrap right over the top of it again. This makes it so we don't have to tie in and cut any butts. So it lessens the amount of bulk where we tie it in. And it also makes it so it's locked in so the wing won't pull out. Then I'm going to come back here and trim those just slightly longer than the segment of the foam. Okay, so now we've got a nice little wing on the back there. Get this guy evened up a little bit. Always get a few stragglers, but they don't have to be perfect. Close enough, right? Okay, now we've got the wing on there. Next, I'm going to add the leg material. The legs are these hairline daddy long legs in black. They're really, really thin, super, super fine. They're basically like Spanflex type of legs, but they're micro. Okay, so I'm going to wrap those in by pinching it over the top of the thread, like that, walking it to the shank of the hook. Oops. Then I can use the thread to move them forward. Get that about where I want it, trim it off. I like these really micro legs. They're a little bit of a hassle to tie with because they're so soft. They move around on you a lot. They wiggle a lot, but in the water they give a lot of movement to the fly. I've got one straggler on my wing. Okay, now I've got that to where it's, this one's a touch longer than I want, where it's kind of separated and in a bit of an X pattern there, half of an X anyway. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. I'm going to pinch the leg around the thread, walk it around to that side of the hook, pinch it against the hook, and we'll wrap over it to hold it in place. And I can trim this loosely to length. And I want to move that one forward a bit also. So I'm going to cover it with the thread. Alright, now that I've got my legs nice and separated, hopefully you can see those on there kind of in an X pattern. The next step is tying in the hackle. I've got a Coachman Brown. This is a Euro saddle. You could use a neck also, but the Euro saddles I find are optimal for this because I'm going to make, this is an oversized hackle. I've got a 14 hook and I've got about a size 12 hackle. Okay, so I like the oversized hackle because I'm going to trim the bottom of it away, and I like the Euro hackle because it's not quite as stiff as some of the genetically bred hackles. So that sounds counterintuitive when we're tying a dry fly and we don't want stiff hackle, but truth be told, I want the look of the hackle, I want the color, and I want a little bit of stability that the wider hackle is going to bring me. So I've tied that in. I'm going to make maybe 3 or 4 wraps of the hackle right in the middle of the segment. I'm going to carefully avoid my legs with the thread and also carefully avoid my legs when I go to cut the hackle. Now that I've got it in place, I'm going to move the thread forward. Now here's the tricky part, not that it's that hard, but you just want to make sure you don't nail those legs and cut those off at this point. Okay, so I've wrapped the hackle through there, and I like this oversized hackle because I'm going to trim it flush on the bottom. So now I've got it in, I've got it tied off. I'm just going to whip finish behind the eye. And the last step, get rid of the thread, last step is to come in here and trim off the hackle so that it's just flush right on the bottom. Again, making sure you don't cut off any of your black legs. I don't like cutting this one in a V necessarily. I like to just cut it flush. I even go in here a lot of times and trim up any slightly longer butt ends that are sticking up, like that one right there. It's going to keep me up at night. There we go. So this little guy, when it's, you can see it just about there, it's just flush on the bottom. Now that's going to rest on the water where it's just flat, right? The hook weight is going to make that sit flush on the water, and these softer fibers I find allow you to land more fish, because if you get a really stiff oversized hackle, smaller fish especially will get in here and try and grab hold of that and they'll push it away. They won't actually get their mouth around it because it's too stiff. This Euro hackle is nice and soft. It also kind of gives us that outrigger effect. Not the prettiest hackle job I've ever done, but it gets the job done. And there's something magic about that Coachman Brown. If you don't have Coachman Brown, tie some with just regular brown, or even a furnace could work. But I'm really confident in that Coachman Brown. If you don't have some of that, get on our website, store.flyfishfood.com, look for some Coachman Brown hackle. The Bionic ant, remember you could replace the wing color, you could put it in white. You could also do a black wing, which actually shows up really well in low light conditions or overcast conditions. It'll silhouette against the gray surface of the water. The Bionic ant, it's a big ant pattern, but I think you'll find the fish really, really like it. It's become one of my go-to dry flies.